between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the VRRC for the latest round of the Mini JCW Championship. We are heading now towards the business end of the season, and we arrive tonight at the Croft circuit for the next couple of rounds of what has already proven to be a hugely exciting championship. Andy McEwen, delighted to say I'm back for one night only. Enjoy it while it lasts, or remember how that mute button works, perhaps, might be the alternative. And I am very happy to say I'm joined, as always, by Jack Oliphant alongside me. The dream team back together, Jack, and ready for another cracking night of mini racing.
Absolutely, it is nice to have you back, Andy. It's you've picked a good round, hopefully, because the championship looks like it's hotted up quite nicely. We're getting into the second half of the championship, obviously, as well. So things are starting to mean a lot more to a lot more drivers, and everything's quite close. So fingers crossed. We've had plenty of action here for Croft for VRRC. It's always provided good racing, unlike real life. So it should be a night.
And it started already. Brace yourselves, everyone. It's not going to get any better, I'm afraid, as the night goes on. But yeah, been a fantastic championship so far, spanning the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. And yeah, this is a very tricky circuit, and one that often throws up a couple of surprises. I think a very certain kind of driving style is often favoured around Croft. It'll be interesting to see which of our drivers comes out on top here tonight. Now, Jack, I've been sort of dipping in and out of this championship a bit as we've been going through. You've been here for a little bit more of it than I have been. How would you assess the way that the first half of the season's gone?
Well, we had a few early chargers in the likes of Brad Smith and John Higgins and people who sort of really pushed the barriers, Tom Potter, Tom Churchhouse, but they've sort of been dropping away slightly for the favoured drivers, you would argue, going into the championship. The likes of Nicky Taylor, who took home the most amount of points at Oulton Park last weekend on a real charge, a week ago. Then Joel Lask as well, obviously championship contender in nearly every single championship that we do. He's right at the front end of this minis at the moment. And Andy Carroll, who's found a consistency. And we've always said about how Andy Carroll is a driver who potentially turns up for one or two rounds of a championship. But I have to say, it's almost like it's becoming the usual now that Andy Carroll is right at the sharp end, potentially going for podium positions. And I'm all here for it, because every time he comes into the interviews, you sort of get the impression that he really enjoys it, unlike some people who maybe take it for granted.
Indeed so. It is a very short list of people who enjoy coming and speaking to us, and nice to have Andy on that list, that's for sure, and nice to be seeing him on the podium more and more often. They were the stars of the show then last time out at Oulton Park. What does all of this mean, though, for the championship standings, I hear you ask? Well, ask no more. This is how the championship looks. Joel Lask leading the way on 129 points. 6 points only clear of Nicky Taylor, with Josh Martin then a further 22 back. So really the onus tonight, I would say, as we really do now move into the second half of the season, is to see whether or not the likes of Josh Martin and a couple of those others in the middle of the top 10 can do anything to close the gap on the top two. Lask and Taylor just such heavy hitters as far as the point scoring has gone, and it's going to take a bit of an effort really to try and catch them up. But good to see Josh Martin in the conversation nonetheless. Hasn't really been the case for the last few championships. Tom Churchhouse sits fourth in points, with Brad Smith completing the top five ahead of Andy Carroll. The aforementioned Andy Carroll sixth. Craig Curtis having a great time in the championship in seventh. Elliot Dalton-Ayres moving up nicely, having not done the first two rounds. He's now solidly inside the top 10. Nathan Smith is ninth, and John Higgins completes the top 10 in the championship. It has been a really, really well-subscribed series, this. We've had, 3 pages worth of drivers enter the championship. Jack, 28 of them, I think, have scored points so far.
Yeah, and I think the likes of Chris Blakey, you'd probably be expecting to move up a little bit higher, actually, after tonight, because his practice is absolutely rapid. He's 3rd in practice right now, but he's 12th in the championship. So again, a few of those drivers here at Croft sort of moving their way up the order, which is nice to see. Johnny Ogden, a driver who we've also sort of been new to this championship, but we're expecting a little bit more of him, I'll be honest, as the sort of weeks go by. Maybe he'll move up the order. And Thomas Potter as well, a driver who we speak about quite a lot, in 17th place. Started off strong, and then sort of hasn't really found his pace yet. But you're right, it's a really well subscribed grid, and there's another page actually as well with a few of the drivers that have either been sort of had a few too many DNFs or DNSs, but there we go, all the way down to 28th place. And the likes of Matt Smith, to be honest, I'm surprised he hasn't scored more points. It's just the fact that he's been a bit caught up with a few too many incidents, especially last week at Oulton Park. Every time he got into a good little ding-dong with someone, he ended up going into a wall somehow. So hopefully we see the best of Matt Smith coming out this time round at Croft. I believe we can actually speak a little bit more about Croft, Andy, because of course we're going to go to the hot lap in a second. But up in the northeast, like you said, however much I mock it, it is a bit of a crowd favourite. And I have to be honest, every time I watch Croft, it's better than ever driving it. So hopefully it should be a really good evening. And we have a hot lap courtesy of Andy Carroll normally, and Andy McEwen can talk you through it.
So, a lap around the Croft circuit. Then Andy Carroll is our tour guide, and he barrels past the pit lane down towards what is a very busy first sector of the lap. It throws a lot of corners at you in a very short space of time. Here is Clervaux, turn 1, hammer the curb on the inside, straight line the second, and get the perfect line into the never-ending right-hander at Hawthorns. Really important, though, that you've got the right bit of the line for this, the chicane. You fire the car over the curbs and then accelerate down the back straight. Very, very bumpy, and as you can see, not actually entirely straight. There's a left-hand kink just before a very bumpy braking zone into one of the best overtaking opportunities on the circuit. A tight right-hander at Tower Bend, and a good exit is vital, though, because now your foot is planted onto the accelerator all the way through the just about flat-out Jim Clark S's. Go side by side through here at your peril. Careful of track limits on the exit before heading into the right-hander at Barcroft. Immediately then onto the brakes. Again, another bumpy braking zone whilst you're turning your way into sunny in and sunny out. Both of these corners have a little bit of camber that helps rotate the car, but it's still very easy to wash out wide on corner exit. Then 3 more corners to go, but arguably the 3 toughest on the circuit. It gets tighter and tighter as you work your way through the left, right here at the complex and into the slowest corner in British motorsport. It's the final hairpin at Croft. It is easily full lock in these front-wheel drive mini challenge cars, and very easy to pick up some wheel spin, particularly on worn tyres late in the race on corner exit. Then up through the gears, past the pits, and onto another lap around Croft. Jack, there's a bit of a heritage in motorsport, a bit of a history of tracks being renamed after drivers who have had a particular affinity to that particular track, maybe had some famous successes there over the years. I did read on social media the other day, there's a petition going around, I think, to rename this place the Circuit Jack Oliphant. What do you make of that?
Oh, well, I'll have to say, if they did, I would never return. Yeah, it's one of those things where I know I bang on about it, but as I said, actually, my mind changed quite drastically on the circuit when we went and did the Fun Cup commentary up there, Andy, of course, because it was such a good race. And I was watching a bit of that track map and thinking, oh, that's where so-and-so over. I can't remember the name of the drivers now, because it was about 2 years ago, but so-and-so overtook. We saw actually a massive crash there, didn't we, as well, which was a bit of a shame. Hopefully we don't see anything like that. The driver was absolutely fine, apparently. Car needed to be reworked a little bit, but yeah, as it happens, you know, the first corner is a really good overtaking opportunity. Tower Bend is a great opportunity as well, like you mentioned in that track walk. And going through quite a few of the corners, sunny in, sunny out, you know, you can go side by side and people try and hang it around the outside. It never normally works, but it's always good entertainment. So I can't really bash it that hard. I'm going to try and do my best. It's my New Year's resolution.
You heard it here first, everyone. I give it 5 minutes personally, but it is one of those tracks. It takes no prisoners, does it? And I think that's why probably a lot of racing drivers, yourself included, maybe don't have the fondest of memories of racing around here, because it's very rewarding if you get it right. If you get it wrong, as you sort of alluded to there, the consequences tend to be fairly sizable. It's a proper old school circuit. There's no tarmac runoff areas. There's no gravel traps, actually, even really. There's only one gravel trap around the entire circuit. It's a fairly small one at the first corner, Clervaux. So if you do go off the track here, the chances are you're going to make contact with something solid. And it's actually got quite a high average speed, as we see a bit of a close call there. The number 18 car bouncing down the grass, trying to stay out of people's way. But yeah, it's there's not a lot of runoff area. There are lots of Armco barriers waiting to collect you if you go off. And okay, this is sim racing. It doesn't cost you a penny if you go off the road and smack your car into a barrier, but it can still ruin your race if you make really even the smallest of mistakes.
Yeah, it won't cost you a penny, but it will cost you quite a big amount of pride, won't it? And plus, even in qualifying, you can see how tight everybody is working. You said it's a high average speed. That means everybody sort of is trying to eke out that little bit of slipstream as well, aren't they? To try and get that little extra half a tenth here and there. And I have to say, I think I would have enjoyed driving it a lot more if I wasn't in such a car that was so high-powered. Ironically, everybody says, oh, it's the higher power, the better, and everything like that. But actually, if you're in one of these minis or something like that, or an MX-5 or something, it does look like a really good circuit to drive. So hopefully they're all enjoying themselves out there as we're watching Nicky Taylor, who's currently on top by 0.2 of a second from Brad Smith, who, again, was an early championship contender and has sort of dropped off the boil a little bit. He was about 5th place in practice. Not the best. Andy Carroll was the pace setter as we were logging on just before we went live into qualifying. So he's a driver that we really need to be looking out for yet again. We've had, as I said, a chat with him a couple of times this season. Craig Curtis, absolutely flying inside the top 5 in practice as well as qualifying. Tom Churchhouse, at the moment, is exactly where we finished practice, actually, in 5th position as well. So, yeah, a couple of drivers that you might not necessarily always expect to be at the top end of the order, Andy, but nonetheless, we're happy that they're there.
Indeed so, and a couple further back who would like to be further forward, really. Joel Lask, the championship leader, is in 6th place at the moment, whilst his nearest rival, Nicky Taylor's up there 2/10 clear of everybody else on provisional pole position. So he could do with a bit of an improvement. Remember, Joel Lask carrying 45 kilos, Nicky Taylor 5 kilos lighter, but no longer quickest. Chris Blakey briefly goes to pole, only to be pipped by Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's been on this real resurgence through the mid part of the season. Jack, he didn't do the opening opening 2 rounds of the championship, so his dropped scores are used up now. He's not realistically going to be a title contender, but that does mean that he's arriving at each round with relatively little ballast on his car. Only really his driver ranking ballast is being added. There's no success ballast from this championship, so he's got a light car, and this is a track that will favour the cars that aren't carrying too much ballast. So not a huge surprise maybe to see him on pole position. What is perhaps more of a surprise is the man who currently would line up alongside him.
Yeah, well, just to mention Elliot Dalton-Ayres, actually, he has I've asked him in the interviews about championship and whether or not he's thinking about it at all, and I would expect him to say no, but actually, no, he's really gunning to go as high as possible. He wants one of the prizes just because he thinks it'd be really cool that he can say he got it whilst missing out on 2 rounds. So, yeah, he's really got that motivation to keep going. Chris Blakey running a little bit wide as he sits behind Tom Churchhouse, I believe that is. Again, both drivers sort of making small mistakes through this lap, which means I don't think that Blakey is going to have an improvement. Although he was improving in Sector 1, his Sector 2 was far too messy, so expect him to be a little bit slower. Here's Josh Martin, 3rd place in the championship, and he's self-confessed qualifying is his weakness, is his kryptonite. He can't seem to get hold of it at all. Yet when it comes to the racing, he always seems to make his way further through the order as the races go on and avoids trouble, which is something that Josh Martin is not really normally associated with. Normally he's associated with the trouble. Andy Carroll just put a purple Sector 2 in, though, but it's not an improvement. He's got pace in him.
Yes, but Josh Martin does not, does he? Only improves there by 2/10, and that's 2 positions. 15th he would line up. I know qualifying's not necessarily his forte, but this is a challenging session by anyone's standards. And actually, as soon as he moved up to 14th, we have improvements for Lee Piercy even, and one other driver I think improved to knock him back down into 16th place. So Josh Martin back onto the 8th row of the grid, and that is not ideal, especially at a track where it is not the easiest to overtake. I think it's fair to say, Jack, really. Not really that much space, not that many big braking zones. And a lot of the time when you're braking, particularly through the second half of the lap, as we're about to see here on board once more with Andy Carroll, you're braking whilst on a turn, and that makes it even harder to try and get up the inside of someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going through Sunny Inn, there's, you sort of think, okay, there may be a little look at the opportunity, but as you go through the Jim Clark S's and a couple of the corners before, the problem is it's only one way through there. That you don't really want to go side by side, and when you do, that's when you see crashes. So it's such a short run to Sunny Inn that you can't really get the impetus to go up the inside. So it's a little bit difficult, really. But as you say, the first half of the circuit, there are overtaking opportunities, but every single driver will be wanting to get on the front row. And at the moment, Andy Carroll with a green Sector 1 and a purple Sector 2. What could he have in the locker for Sector 3 as he comes across the line? He's down, and he's unfortunately meant he's still in third.
Yeah, must have dropped a fair chunk in the final sector then, because he would look like he was going to smash the fastest time so far, 1:30.6, and ends up actually over a tenth off it. So something did not go right in the final sector. But that final sector, Jack, is basically the final complex of corners. And I think that must be, even I agree, the most frustrating sequence of corners in all of British motorsport, especially in a front-wheel drive car, because all they want to do is understeer. You're accelerating through a tight corner with a lot of lock on the steering, and a front-wheel drive Mini will not enjoy that.
No, it's really, really difficult, actually. And it's a bit of a testament to how good these drivers are here at VRRC. And it's something that when you're looking at it on the stream or you look at them in real life and you're thinking, well, they make it look easy. It can't be that hard. It absolutely is. And you're talking minuscule margins because you're going for such low speed as well. You said the slowest corner in British motorsport. And then you're going on one of the longest straights that we have here into an overtaking opportunity. So every single bit of slip and every single little bit of understeer counts massively when you get to the end of the straight. So even in qualifying, we're starting to see the difference that it can make. Trust me, in the race, it's even bigger. And when people start fighting, when they start lunging each other into that final hairpin, all of a sudden everyone gets held up, and the front two could be out by 5 seconds. They'll lose about 2.5, 3 seconds if they start to lunge each other at that corner specifically.
And the problem is at the final hairpin that you've got to take such a wide line in, because the car can barely make it round the corner on full lock, and so you leave this big inviting space on the inside for someone to lunge into. But then when they do lunge into it, they can't really make the corner either, and so you just end up really holding each other up on corner exit, which obviously is not ideal. Craig Curtis jumped up into 4th position, I think I spotted there, ahead of Nicky Taylor. So Nicky Taylor is now starting to slip down the order slightly into 5th position. 6th place then for Brad Smith. Then it's Tom Churchhouse 7th, Paul Laramie in 8th place, Joel Laskin 9th, and Lee Piercy completing the top 10. So Lask only 9th, Taylor only 5th, Josh Martin is still languishing down in 18th place. Tell you what, Jack, I'm beginning to fancy Elliot Dalton-Air's chances myself.
I know, yeah, he's been absolutely sublime since he's come back into the championship, to be honest. It makes you think, like, why on earth did he prioritise the GCSEs over this in the first place? Really? Because he's obviously superb at this, isn't he? Nathan Smith runs wide, maybe not so superb at this portion of the track. He lets the driver go through ahead of him. Nathan Smith in 11th place, not inside the top 10. He's going to be slightly disappointed with that. Here's Heisman, who I believe is a little bit higher up than we're used to seeing in Dave Heisman. So a couple of drivers who, as I said, not having the best evening. Josh Martin, Thomas Potter as well, can't seem to get to grips with it. Nathan Smith. Matt Smith, but Heisman, I think, is a little bit further up than we're used to seeing. Chris Blakey's just gone purple in Sector 2. His Sector 1 is not really anything to write home about, though, so I think he might not get the pole position that he's been looking, but he only needs to improve by less than a 10th, Andy. This could be his, as Elliot Dalton-Air's crosses the line and doesn't extend it.
See what Blakey can do then. Can he find the 10th? No, not quite. A 1:30.6, but it's not a 6:13. It's a 6:41, which means by 28 thousandths of a second, Elliot Dalton-Air manages to hang on at the top. But a fantastic effort that was from Chris Blakey, who himself, of course, is not carrying a huge amount of ballast, 5 kilos only aboard Chris Blakey's Mini, and so that perhaps explains why he and Elliot Dalton-Air both going so quick. But don't take anything away from Chris. This has still been a very, very impressive performance. He was a class front runner in the Cayman class of our Porsche Championship a couple of months ago, and It's now nice to see him right at the pointy end of a championship proper. I think I saw in the background there Stuart Henderson off the road, so his qualifying session likely coming to an end. But Chris Blakey continuing to push on here and trying to find a few improvements, but his first sector is slightly slower than he has been before, and so no improvement necessarily likely now. However, we do have Dave Heasman improving in Sector 1, a personal best in the first part of the lap for him, as he now tries to move up from 9th place.
Another driver who has gone quicker in Sector 1, respectively, is Joel Lask. And if you're talking about championship and looking at that one, well, Joel Lask obviously top of the championship on very, very similar weight to Nicky Taylor. But Nicky Taylor all the way up in 5th position, 6 places higher. And having a look at their BOP as well, the amount of kilos they got on board, Joel Lask only 5 kilos heavier than Nicky Taylor. 45 for Joel Lask, Nicky Taylor on 40. So whatever Nicky Taylor's doing, it seems to be going very, very well for him. If he can maintain that pace through the entirety of a race run, that will be impressive, because the tyres are going to start to get scrubbed. And as Andy said on the track map, that's going to hurt you coming out of that all-important final corner. Joel Lask comes across the line. It's not an improvement in position. He stays behind Kenny Press.
Yes, he does, with Johnny Oulton moving up into 12th position. Nicky Taylor to 3rd, so Nicky Taylor jumps up a row on the grid then from 5th to 3rd. Look how ridiculously close those times are, though. Nicky Taylor is 2/1000ths of a second quicker than Andy Carroll, who is just under 200ths of a second quicker than Craig Curtis. So close up at the pointy end of the grid. Kenny Press looking to try and move himself a bit closer to the front as well. He's gone personal best in Sector 1, an average Sector 2, but still perhaps a chance for a bit of an improvement if he gets a good exit from the final hairpin, accelerates up through the gears, needs to find only a 7/1000th of a second to move ahead of Dave Heasman, but he's not ultimately able to do it. Stays in 10th position for the time being. Time for one more lap in the qualifying session for him. Then a couple of drivers starting to pull off to the side of the road. Their sessions are done, and not a huge amount of green appearing on our timing screen, Jack, so I suspect Elliot Dalton-Ayres has done enough, but by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah, well, Elliot only has 20 kilos on board. I think you mentioned that earlier on, Andy. That will really help him in the race run compared to the likes of Nicky Taylor and Joel Lask, for the reasons I said before. You know, it's going to be harsh on these tyres. It's quite a high degradation circuit here. So Josh Martin, where is he now? 19th place with 30 kilos on board. His progression later in the races is going to be really very difficult. He's just going to have to keep himself out of trouble. Not that far out of trouble that he just jumps out of everybody's way, though. I think he maybe is either going to, he's winding up for one last run with a little bit of slipstream help as well, because here's Andy Carroll. Only needs to gain a 10th of a second or just over to get on pole position. It's not going to happen if he doesn't get in the slipstream and nail every single corner. Although it may do. Andy Carroll jumps to the top, and what the hell do I know?
Wow, it doesn't just jump to the top, jumps to the top by nearly a 10th. I mean, that shocked me even. He got personal best in the middle sector, but the final sector was mega, and that is ultimately what has put him on pole position. Now, can Elliot Dalton-Ayres respond? The answer at the moment is no. Not in the first sector of his latest and final lap of the session. Chris Blakey has already seen the checkered flag. Here is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, then accelerating down towards the final complex of corners, and, well, having sort of put my money on him a couple of minutes ago, it did not look like anyone was going to improve, and all of a sudden, Andy Carroll has proven me wrong. Craig Curtis, by the way, has just improved in Sector 1 as well. He, remember, is 5th fastest at the moment, 2/10ths off pole position, so pole perhaps unlikely for Craig, but he could move up onto the second row of the grid. We'll find out in a moment or two. In fact, he might well do, because he's gone green in Sector 2 as well. This is a really, really good lap this from Craig Curtis. Is it going to be enough to maybe even challenge the front row? Takes a nice wide sweeping line through the hairpin. Look at that, picks up the throttle nice and early. Bit of a slipstream there from Tom Churchhouse ahead of him, and Craig Curtis comes across the line to improved to 3rd place. What a fantastic final sector that was. Greens all around, actually. Personal bests in all 3 sectors, and Craig Curtis jumps onto the second row of the grid. So it is a very muddled up order that we'll have for our first of 2 races coming up in just a few minutes' time. It will be Andy Carroll on pole. It will be Elliot Dalton-Ayres second, but Craig Curtis with a fantastic late improvement there will jump up onto the second row of the grid. Well, lots to unpack after an intriguing qualifying session. Race 1 is just a few minutes away. Before that, and on the other side of this break, we'll have a chat with our pole sitter. Well, welcome back, everybody. Then qualifying done here at Croft in the VRRC Mini Championship, and what a qualifying session it was. A historic qualifying session, at least the result, for our pole sitter, Andy Carroll, who joins us now in the commentary box. And Andy, I think this is the first time that I've interviewed you as a pole sitter. Well done. What a lap that was.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That was, pulled that out from somewhere. It was tough to get a clean lap in with all the traffic. And then, for most of that lap, I was kind of running pretty much on my same time as my fastest lap before. And then the final sector, I just must have nailed it because I suddenly gained sort of, I think, about 2/10 in that final sector. So, yeah, really chuffed with that. It's my first pole with VRRC, and it's been a long time coming. So, yeah, really chuffed.
That is crazy, actually, to think that, like you said, after all the races that you've done, that's the first time you've landed on pole position. And honestly, halfway through the lap, we didn't even see it coming either. We saw the improvements in the second sector, but what do you think was the key through those final few corners? Myself and Jack were discussing that final sector a bit during the session and how tricky it is, how patient you've got to be on the throttle. And what do you think it was maybe that you found in what essentially is just the final three corners?
Yeah, I think it was probably that double right-hander. I think I absolutely flew through there on a good line, and then sort of getting the last hairpin sort of bang on where you've got, it's quite easy just to get bogged down a bit if you touch a curb and things. But I think I got that correct and sort of had drive straight out of the corner, so that then helps right down the straight as well. So. Yeah, as I said, I was quite surprised. And I kind of looked at my delta coming out of that last corner, and it was purple. And I was like, wow, yeah, it's one of those things. But it was so close with Elliot and Chris all week on the practice times, and it was I was expecting it to be really, really tight, and even the top 5 was really close.
Well, that's the thing as well, because the times are so tight. If you'd have qualified behind any of those drivers, getting past them would have been a real challenge, wouldn't it? Now, I'm not saying you're going to have this easy out in front, anything but that track position around a track like Croft, especially when you're all capable of running within a tenth or so of each other, that could be really important, couldn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a huge amount of advantage for pole here in terms of grid position. Elliot looks like he's about 2 foot further back or something. So it's just going to be as long as I can get a reasonable start. And obviously I'll have the inside line into that first section, which could be pretty critical given how tight it is. And as I say, but I'm sure we'll have Chris and Nikki behind pushing us as well. So. Yeah, it's going to be really, just got to try and get a good getaway and make sure I'm hopefully still sort of slightly ahead going into those first few corners. And then, it's a tough one to kind of get past on this lap. So we'll see how long I can kind of try and keep those sort of 3 or 4 guys behind me, still behind me. And just hopefully it's a nice, good, clean, close race, and we'll see where it all settles out in the end.
Well, it ain't going to be easy, Andy, but we are very much going to look forward to seeing how you get on. Congratulations on the pole position, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again in half an hour or so.
Thanks, Andy.
Andy Carroll then pole position, first ever pole position here at the VRRC, and he, Jack Oliphant, is rightly very happy with that.
Absolutely, he should be, and it wasn't like it was just a one-off lap or fluke or anything like that. He showed consistency in the practice, and he showed consistency in qualifying as well. So, well done to him, and fingers crossed that he can actually hold on to that position for a couple of laps and then pull away, obviously, is what he's thinking. We're sort of hoping that there's a little bit of a battle with the top 5, actually, because they're separated by less than a tenth and a half. But anyway, before we get to that, we must look further ahead and look at what else that VRRC has to offer. Well, in the World Endurance League, we've mentioned this a fair few times. Qatar and Imola has been and gone. In a couple of weeks' time, on April the 10th, we'll be heading off to Spa, and Le Mans will be the next 2 rounds, followed by Sao Paulo after another 8-week major championship, and Kota, and then another 8-week major championship before we head in September to Fuji and Bahrain. And then there's still opportunities to enter into this amazing championship, and you have the choice of all 4 amazing cars that you can see on offer. And I'm being moved on rather quickly here. So the round 1 has already been and gone of the Truck Racing Championship. Round 2 at Zolder has also been and gone, and round 3 on March 17th is at LM Bugatti. And any of those trucks on in front of you, it won't be fully broadcasted, but there is live watch-alongs. Free entry for any VRRC Discord member. Next thing then will be the time attack. And it looks like I'm actually quicker than the director there. Time attack, Porsche 911 GT1 around Le Mans. We're at the final stage, this sort of GT looking time attack stage before we round it off with obviously the 911 before we go into a brand new theme for the next couple of months. But yeah, if you want to get your times in around Le Mans, then it's an awesome car. It's an amazing track. You should definitely get in and do it. Free entry to VRRC members. And lastly, but not least, the F1 Mirror League. Saudi Arabia, March the 7th. This is the championship where effectively we mirror the F1, but only for 12 rounds. So Saudi Arabia kicks off the championship, and it should be a decent ninth race. 2 25-minute races. Race 2 being a full reverse grid, something that the real F1 are too pansy to try and do. Entry fee is VRRC members go for free, and non-members it's £10 a round. There are trophies up for grabs as per usual, as well as driver of the round medals. So that one should be very, very exciting. It's not in a Formula 1 car, I think it's in a Formula 3, but it's still, trust me, that car is hard enough to drive. And when you go wheel-to-wheel racing, things can get pretty dicey. So please do jump along and get involved. And any of the links below will take you to the VRRC website or the Discord.
Well done. And breathe, Jack. We'll get back to you in 15 minutes or so when you've had a chance to calm down from all of the excitement. There's so much coming up to look forward to here at the VRRC, and they're very much looking forward to being here for as much of that as possible. Right then, race 1 coming up momentarily. We've got time for one more break, and then we'll have all of the action from Croft. Welcome back, everybody. Race 1 here from Croft, about to get underway then after an intriguing and very, very close qualifying session. It's Andy Carroll who came out on top. It looked as though it was Elliot Dalton-Ayres who was going to snatch the pole position, but that was not meant to be after Andy Carroll pulled out the best final sector by far of anyone in the qualifying session. He therefore starts on our left as we look at it. That's the inside line for Clairvaux. As he was saying in the interview, it's actually not a staggered grid here at Croft. It's a 2x2x2 standing start, and that means it could, Jack Oliver, be a fairly congested run down into turn 1.
Yeah, it's all about who gets the best grip off the line, isn't it? And, well, considering the top 5, as I said in the build-up, with less than a tenth and a half separated, really that could be absolutely crucial. It also could be a bit of a pile-up in that mid-pack, so hopefully people keep their heads. Another point that I wanted to mention in the mid-pack, actually, is Thomas Potter. It seems to have pulled one flying lap out somewhere, so he moved himself up into the top 10. Heisman is in 10th place as well. Joel Lasker got demoted to 12th. That's what made me think about it. And Josh Martin's still all the way down in 19th place. He couldn't get anything out of qualifying. He's going to be praying that there's not a pile-up.
Well, indeed, and really banking on a good result in race 2. That is Josh's only hope, realistically, of getting a really good result out of tonight. Right then, place your bets, everyone. The second half of the season about to burst into life here at Croft, with Andy Carroll and Elliot Oulton sharing the front row of the grid. The revs rise, the red lights go out now, and we're away and racing here at Croft. Pretty even initial jump from both of the front row men, and in fact, even as they drag up through the gears, there is nothing to choose between the two of them. Perhaps a nose ahead for Oulton, but that's the long way round through Clervaux. Surely he won't commit to the move. No, he doesn't. And Carroll holds on to the advantage then, slotting into second Oulton. Third place Chris Blakey, fourth Brad Smith, which means that we've had a bit of a drama for Nicky Taylor. He's down into sixth position. Here though comes Oulton side by side through the chicane. He had much better front end grip through Hawthorne. He's out on the grass though, bounces his way back onto the road. And who is going to retain the advantage? It will be Carroll. And here comes Blakey, 3 wide down the outside towards Tower Corner. Andy Carroll having to fend them off from all sides and somehow succeeds in doing so. Blakey now hung out to dry as they all barrel towards the Jim Clark S's together.
Amazingly, to be honest, I was surprised that Blakey's even in this fight to begin with, because he just didn't get off the line at all. But he managed to get through Clervaux unharmed and unscathed. But it looks like the front three are definitely going to lunge each other, aren't they? And Elliot Oulton in that second place.
Ooh.
Brad Smith, who I don't actually know where he qualified, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the top 5. I could be slightly wrong in my estimations there, actually. But yeah, he's doing a very good job. He's just allowed, all of a sudden, though, going through Sunny out, to allow the top 2 to pull away. What did I say in qualifying, Andy? The front 2 could pull away by 5 seconds. They start lunging each other through the final couple of corners. That'll get eaten away instantly. And Elliot Oulton is already looking like he wants it.
Yeah, that was definitely an attempted lunge, wasn't it? But Andy Carroll saw it coming at the last second, covered it off, went defensive, and he will somehow lead at the end of lap number 1. But my word, he was under assault there for most of the first lap of racing. Carroll leads then, Oulton second, Brad Smith in third, Nicky Taylor fourth, ahead of Craig Curtis, Chris Blakey, Tom Churchhouse, Thomas Potter is 8th. There, and just behind him, Paul Laramie and Joel Lask. So Joel Lask just about in the top 10, and really that black and blue car is the one we need to watch out for, because remember, he is only 6 points clear of Nicky Taylor in the championship. Taylor is 4th, and Joel really needs to try and make some progress.
I'm looking for Tom Churchhouse. He's dropped all the way down to 7th place, which isn't ideal. I think he qualified in 5th, maybe he qualified in 6th or 7th, actually, to be fair, so it isn't that bad. Oulton is going for that narrower entry. Andy Carroll confident that he wasn't going to get lunged, going for that later apex to get the best drive through the Jim Clark S's, and I think he's just about managed to do such a thing, although Oulton hasn't really been dropped, has he? Unlike Brad Smith, who's got Nicky Taylor breathing down his exhaust pipe now. If you, as a driver, you don't want going that close. It is going to be Nicky Taylor, because even with that weight on board, oh, that's a massive clip. Elliot Oulton goes rolling.
What on earth happened there? I glanced down at the timing screen at the worst possible moment, and he's carried on. What was that all about? He's back on the road then, and that looked very, very bizarre indeed. He has rejoined in 6th position with Tom Churchhouse right behind him, but lucky really to still be in the race at all. I'm actually looking back on the live stream now to try and figure out exactly what happened there, and it looked a little bit like a slightly glitchy curb strike really, and the car overreacted a bit. And over it went. I'm sure it will have sustained some damage, but he's lucky just to be in the race at all.
To be honest, I'm looking at the crash sort of pop-ups that come up with our timing screen, and I don't think there is that much damage. I think it is literally just a bit of a glitch. So that is very strange indeed. It's allowed Andy Carroll to have 2 seconds near his, damn it, breathing room to Brad Smith, who's got Nicky Taylor for company. And, well, where's he ended up? He's ended up in 6th place, hasn't he, Elliot Oulton? In between Chris Blakey and Tom Churchhouse. So Chris Blakey, he's really not had the best start, dropping down into 5th position. That did help the Oulton role. It helped Blakey anyway. I don't think it helped Oulton too much, but it means that he's got one more position further up. But now we're probably gonna see Oulton carve through. It's gonna be an entertaining race, Andy. It was an entertaining crash, but it's not probably gonna be a true representative of what could have been.
Well, yeah, I mean, what progress can he make, though? Because it's so difficult to make the positions up around here, and it's a quick group of drivers ahead, although that will help. That was Brad Smith making a mistake, outbraked himself through Sunny, a bit like Tom Churchhouse just did further back, and that means that it's sort of bunched everybody up behind him. Nicky Taylor, I think, might be through into 2nd. He's looking around the outside. It's all kicking off 3 wide further back, but that is the fighting within the podium places, and Taylor, yes, has muscled his way through, took advantage of the mistake there from Brad Smith, and he is up into P2, takes a very defensive line through the hairpin. Out wide went Craig Curtis, and they all come out in the other side in the same order. So Taylor second, Smith third, Curtis fourth, Blakey fifth, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres loving seeing this battling ahead because that could open up an opportunity for him to come through. He's peeking to the inside of Chris Blakey, already keen to get on with this.
Yeah, that's if he can see the action through the red mist that's probably descended in front of him after that glitchy mistake. But it's interesting going through the final corner though, because you saw three different lines from Taylor, Smith and Curtis. You saw Nicky Taylor going for that really defensive line, Brad Smith sort of in the middle of the road, which maybe is sort of the best of both worlds, not particularly quick, but you're not going to get overtaken, but you might have a look at the inside of someone. I think Craig Curtis just go as wide as he can through to get that exit, but leaving the door completely open for Chris Blakey to have a little bit of a nibble, but luckily for Curtis, he sort of got away with it. But yeah, really interesting to see how they all came out at pretty much equidistant lengths from each other in the end, as Nicky Taylor pulls away slightly from Brad Smith.
Yeah, indeed. Nicky Taylor, perhaps the only one apart from Dalton-Ayres who might have the pace to chase after the race leader, but 2.9 seconds is quite a big starting point to work from, isn't it, really? Andy Carroll can afford now to drive well within himself, you would have thought, and still retain that advantage, but we'll watch the timing screen with interest to see if anything happens. The best thing that could have happened, really, there for Andy Carroll was an incident occurring for Elliot Dalton-Ayres, because Dalton-Ayres was right on his tail, and that moment has bought Andy Carroll a very, very healthy lead indeed. So out of the hairpin we go, and Brad Smith holding on to this third place for the time being. Dalton-Ayres there at the back of the group. What can he do about Chris Blakey? He's clearly quicker than this group ahead, Jack, but where are the overtaking opportunities?
Well, going into turn one is potentially one, and we saw Chris Blakey, or is that Craig Curtis, sorry, having a little look at the inside, but it didn't happen. Elliot Dalton-Ayres almost trying to crowbar his way through before he gets to the second chicane. It doesn't quite happen there either, but now is the opportunity, isn't it? Get a clean exit out of that chicane, get all the way down, foot flat to the floor, and try and make your driver in front of you move left or right. Get in the slipstream, lunge into Tower Bend. That's what Elliot Dalton-Ayres is thinking about here, because again, it's a late apex is optimal. That means the gap gets opened up. Brad Smith and Craig Curtis ahead of them are battling, but Chris Blakey versus Elliot Dalton-Ayres is the one we're going to be focusing on. As they go through the S's, it's going to be exactly the same order as they went into Tower Bend. But you can see that's the opportunity, but it does get extinguished far too quickly through the Jim Clark S's.
Yeah, if you can, the contact, they're all into each other, they're all sideways, and they're all still in the same position somehow, because I mentioned it's a narrow track. As soon as you start going sideways around the corners, there isn't actually the space for anyone to drive past you. So a little bit of a concertina effect there going into Sunny. It is Dalton-Ayres who just sort of ducks his head out of line, tries to find an opening on the inside of Chris Blakey, heading through the complex. That doesn't quite work. What about the hairpin? Yes, he's going to look to the inside. He does more than look. He commits to the inside line. And Elliot Dalton-Ayres for fifth place is go. He's gone through, and down into sixth goes Blakey. That was a textbook lunge, wasn't it, Jack, to use your technical term from earlier on. And that is how you overtake at the final corner at Croft.
Yeah, I don't know whether there was a little bit of a touch and go, trying to maybe encouraging Chris Blakey on a little bit further than he wanted, but we have seen Blakey go for that wider line previously, so let's just say it was a really good lunge by Dalton-Ayres, and say that Blakey really should have expected it with how eager Dalton-Ayres was crawling all over the back of him, even at corners that you don't necessarily think there's going to be overtaking opportunities. Dalton-Ayres was looking left, looking right, trying to put drivers off in front of him. So the next target is going to be Craig Curtis on our screens right now, running really well in fourth position. Brad Smith versus Curtis has been a sort of an ongoing battle for the last 5 minutes or so. Brad Smith just opening up a tiny bit of a gap as we see the top 10. Now, this is a bit of a train forming behind Thomas Potter, isn't it? With Nathan Smith, Paul Laramie, Dave Heisman, Stuart Henderson, all in the mix going through the S's.
Indeed they are. Up towards Barcroft they go then. Thomas Potter at the head of this little train going on just at the back end of the top 10, as we've said. Joel Lask then has gained a couple of places since I last mentioned him. Out wide goes Nathan Smith, and Paul Laramie needed no second invitation. Bounces over the curbs, gets to the inside line, but he hasn't got the move made. That's the outside line going into the complex. Nathan Smith is standing his ground on the inside, and they rub panels slightly through the left, but now the track goes to the right. That favours Laramie, but he still can't get the job done. Now we head into the hairpin. Oh, and really vicious contact there as they head towards the final corner. A bit unnecessary, I have to say that, but Nathan Smith manages to hang on the inside line at the hairpin. Almost always translates to the best position heading down the straight. Dave Heisman there, I think, was coming into the pit lane to serve a penalty just behind. I think that was because of track limits infringements, and so he will drop towards the back end of the field. Laramie peaks to the inside at Clairvaux, but Jack, that first corner, it's actually quite a quick corner, isn't it? So if you go to the inside, it's always a bit of a low percentage move, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can't really fit two cars through it either, so one of you is going to probably end up in the gravel, and it's probably going to be caused by contact. So it's not a move that is offered easily, let's say that. You really do have to be side by side, and you really do have to play ball with each other and respect that both of you probably going to have to hit the brakes and go a bit slower through there than you reasonably want to. But yeah, ultimately, you're not going to see too many lunges, as Elliot Dalton-Ayres has now found himself clinging onto the back of Craig Curtis. We said that that was going to be the next driver with a target on his rear end, and unfortunately for Craig, he's going to have to do a little bit more defending than trying to catch Brad Smith, because Elliot Dalton-Ayres is on a mission, isn't he? He's lost out on a potential race win, as we see Andy Carroll still about 3 seconds ahead of Nicky Taylor. But Nicky's not that far away from these lot, and there's only a 15 minutes left. That's plenty of time for Dalton-Ayres to carve through and maybe have 5 minutes, a little pop at Nicky Taylor.
Well, and crucially, Taylor isn't really gaining at all on Andy Carroll. The gap was 2.9 seconds about 7 or 8 minutes ago. It's 2.8 seconds now, so not really going any quicker than the race leader, Nicky Taylor. So that gap staying pretty sizable. Carroll looking good out at the front of the pack. You know, the fight going on for 4th place. Elliot Dalton-Ayres continuing this charge back through the order after the dramas that he had earlier on, and it looked like he was teeing Curtis up there for the move through Hawthorne. Wait and see whether that one pays off. Further back, though, that is Johnny Oulton slipping up the inside of Henderson, who bounces through the gravel. Sam Milner takes advantage and moves up into 13th position, and they will continue their battle as they head down towards Tower Bend. At the front of the pack, though, I think Dalton-Ayres was teeing up Craig Curtis for a move, because on the timing tower, he's moved ahead, but there's all sorts of drama. That is Chris Blakey coming through. Now, what on earth has happened there down at Tower Corner? Dalton-Ayres has got himself ahead of Craig Curtis, but he's still only 5th place.
I don't know how Chris Blakey managed to find a mini-sized gap between these two drivers. We were saying about how narrow the circuit is. How is there wide enough for 3 of them to come out of that corner? We just don't know, do we? Or maybe there was a little bit of contact between Dalton-Ayres and Curtis. They bounce off each other, then Blakey drives up the inside of, well, through the middle of them, shall we say. Not entirely sure, but a great move. Let's call it a great move from Blakey, because to get through 2 drivers in 1 corner has to be seen as opportunistic, and, you know, he's taking the moment when it's come to him. He's going to have to defend quite hard now here from Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who lunged him a couple of laps ago at this particular corner. He seems to have learned his lesson. He goes inside, very defensive, and gets the drive off the corner as well, hoping and praying that Curtis has a little lunge back at him.
Yeah, well, Dalton-Ayres sort of actually did the wrong thing there. He got a really good run through the right-hander, which meant that Blakey was fully aware that he had to defend into the hairpin. You almost want to try and surprise your opponent there and sort of come from a bit further back. But anyway, Dalton-Ayres will try again on the next lap, I'm sure. Seems to have a really good front end on the number 71 car, does Dalton-Ayres. He can really hold tight lines through corners like Hawthorne through that final sector, and that, I think, is partly, at least, why he's able to make some overtakes, but hasn't yet been able to actually break up any further than 5th position. What about this time into Tower Corner? He's just a touch too far back here, and so has to settle back in line again. So intriguing stuff. Curtis, strangely now, dropping away from these two and into the clutches of Tom Churchhouse. And look who that is, just slowly but surely starting to eat into the advantage this group had over him. Joel Lask. Joel Lask not out of this one yet. Any points, any places he can gain in this race could be absolutely crucial as far as his championship hopes are concerned.
I have to be honest, you built the suspense up there, Andy. I was looking around at my monitor going, who is it? Who's creeping up? But you're right, yeah, Joel Lask. I thought you were talking about Tom Churchhouse, but every time these guys try and overtake each other, they're going to hold each other up even more. And Brad Smith is the driver that's probably the happiest about all this, because at the moment, his bottom step of the podium is a little bit safer than he was expecting, potentially going into the final 11 minutes of this race. But Joel Lask moving forward. He's not got the lap times under his belt necessarily. What is his best lap time? 1:31.249. Compare that to Nicky Taylor, who, as I mentioned in qualifying, is probably the closest comparison you can have. They're separated by 6 points in the championship and 5 kilograms on the road. Nicky Taylor is a 30.9. So you're talking about 3 or 4 tenths of a second difference on their best flying lap, that is, of course. Joel Lask on the final lap, 1:31.3. So he's going quite fairly consistently. And it's consistent with the drivers just ahead of him as well. Chris Blakey and Elliot Dalton-Ayres are in the 30s. But apart from that, they're all doing about the same pace.
Yeah, I think Joel really needs them to keep on knocking lumps out of each other, doesn't he? As soon as they start battling and bouncing off each other, that sort of allows him to close a bit more quickly, and he's ever the opportunist, isn't he? So if they do really start tripping over each other, then you know that he's going to try and stick his car in any gap that presents itself, and he will try and make a move, but got to get there first. 10.25 minutes still to go, though, so he's got time to bridge that gap and maybe make a couple of places. And of course, he's likely to start a few places ahead of Nicky Taylor for race 2. That will benefit him against his nearest championship rival. Now, Rich Hayden has read my mind there. The next driver we need to focus on really is Josh Martin, because he's third in the championship, but only 15th. For whatever reason, Jack, he's been competitive all season long. We've had a real upturn in performance from Josh Martin, but there's something about this car track combination that he just can't get his head around.
I giggle there, not because... So it's nice to see that great minds think alike and whatnot. But Josh Martin, yeah, he's struggling. He's getting past Sam Milner right now, but yeah, for some reason he's just in no man's land, isn't he? And I can't even say that he's been involved with any bit of contact or anything like that, because in qualifying he just didn't have it either. And he's going white line defensive here, Andy. Almost. He's going into this first corner. He's in the middle of the road nearly, and that's just never gonna mean that you can catch up to the likes of Stuart Henderson. I did see in his bio when the drivers can give us their commentator notes, a little bit of a brief about the drivers and everything like that. He said that all he was doing was going for reverse grid wins. He wanted that reverse grid pole position and nothing else mattered. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I think it's a bit of a cop out, to be honest.
Maybe he needs a bit of driver tuition, not necessarily from Rich Hayden, perhaps from a real Croft expert, Jack. I don't know whether you know anyone who could perhaps show him the ropes around what is always a very challenging racetrack. So, Rich, were you broadcasting to everyone there, or do I need to relay what you just said? Because that was quite interesting. So apparently Josh said that he wondered whether he had a restrictor on his car because he felt that he was going so slowly and his car might have been underpowered. I wish it was as simple as that, Josh, but I do fear that maybe the answer lies elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a karting excuse, isn't it, really? Left the junior restrictor on and wanted the senior in the senior class or something. But yeah, a bit of a shame. I think he needs to be able to brush this off and maybe practice a bit more. I'm starting to make a tally, to be honest, Andy, of the amount of drivers that come in and they say, oh, well, you know, I didn't practice that much. I've only done half an hour of practice. I only installed the track as qualifying went live. You know, I only jumped on the sim 5 minutes into the first race. All that rubbish, right? Okay, it's just the drivers sometimes need a little bit more effort in. And the likes of Andy Carroll, I can pretty much guarantee you, Chris Blakey, Craig Curtis, drivers who have turned up this week have probably gone and put the effort in as Elliot Daltonez carves his way through Chris Blakey as I praise him. Going through the Jim Clark S as though it might be a different story.
Yeah, this ain't over yet. Blakey's going to try and stand his ground. Side by side through here is not easy to do. Out wide goes Blakey, but he didn't really have anywhere to go there. They're still side by side through Barcroft, but now we turn right sharply. Oh, Blakey sideways. He's over the on the inside of the track, gathers it together beautifully. I was panicking, as I'm sure Dalton Ayres was for a second there, that he was going to go careering into the blue number 71 car, but thankfully gathered it together. But that has let Elliot Dalton Ayres off the hook. So Dalton Ayres up into fourth place, immediately sets off after Brad Smith, but a brilliant bit of car control there, Jack. And that is exactly what can happen through that particular braking zone. It made a reference this in the track guide earlier on. It's such a bumpy braking zone, and you're braking on a turn as well at really high speed, and the cars just get really light and really easily unsettled. And I think that's exactly what happened there to Chris Blakey.
Yeah, it is difficult because a front-wheel drive car, obviously, you are trying to brake and push the inertia over that front left tyre would be if you're braking on turning right. It can be an advantage, but equally the rear end goes so light that it's really difficult to keep that back end in check. So, especially if you're doing it consistently every single lap with tyres that are degrading and drivers who are going left and right of you, trying to overtake the ones in front of you, it can be so difficult to strike that balance that, you know, some of these drivers obviously... Well, I think he got a little bit lucky there, let's put it this way, that the corners kept on turning right, because if we had just a left turn there, Chris Blakey would have been somewhere well near the back at this point. So it's really good that he was able to keep it going. Did allow Dalton Ayres, though, to have a free shot pretty much at Brad Smith, who's probably fearing that the last 5 minutes are going to be a little bit busy for him.
Well, yeah, because there's no doubt who the quicker of these two drivers is right now. It's certainly Elliot Dalton-Ayres. He's steamed up onto the rear bumper of the number 69 car and looks now to try and make a way through if he can. Both of these drivers, of course, running with Phoenix Sim Racing support. So in a way, they are sort of frenemies, if you like, out on the track, but I don't think Brad Smith's making this too easy for Dalton-Ayres, defending quite heavily into the complex and into the hairpin. He's going to have to go the long way round here as Elliot Dalton-Ayres, because Brad Smith wants to get the podium, but really it's the least that Elliot will be satisfied with here as a podium finish. He knows this was a race that he could definitely have won, certainly finished second pretty easily in, and he'll be disappointed to be now stuck in fourth, staring at the back of Brad Smith's car. They turn right into Clervaux. Smith just carries a bit too much speed in, but then it narrows up so much into the hook at Hawthorne, doesn't it, Jack, that you can sort of make a bit of a mistake at turn one. You're always likely to be able to cover the position into turn two.
As long as you don't go in the gravel, yeah, you're pretty much right. You just reset to about 30 yards further on, but going into the Tower Bend, that's a different story. Here comes Dalton-Ayres looking around the outside, the long way round of Brad Smith, who defended so well through the final corner. Is he going to stick up the apex? He does keep a narrow line out, which doesn't allow Elliot Dalton-Ayres to get the switchback. And through the S's, I think Dalton-Ayres knows that that's not a move that's going to happen just yet. Let's save it up, try and get the momentum and lunge them into the final part of the circuit, and hopefully don't have to lose the rear end again. Going through into sunny and sunny out. No, not even worried about this, is he, Andy? I think he's waiting and biding his time. Brad Smith clatters the curb as they go through into sunny out, and it's just about still nose to tail.
Yeah, the move's going to come in the complex, isn't it? Look, he wants to try and get Brad Smith offline, so jink to the inside to force a defensive move out of Brad. That means he might be offline now, going into the right-hand element of the complex, which he is, and that might now open the door heading into the hairpin, but you know that Brad Smith will defend the inside line. To the outside goes Dalton-Ayres. Their battle is bringing the next group of cars back onto their tail, though, and so actually Dalton-Ayres running out of time in a way. It's not necessarily that Chris Blakey might be able to take advantage of this and overtake him, but it's just that extra bit of distraction that Dalton-Ayres doesn't really need right now. He wants to focus all of his attentions on fighting Brad Smith, and instead he's got this queue of cars now starting to form behind him. Brad managing to hold on for now, but look, this is where Dalton-Ayres has been so strong. Brad Smith understeers out wide. Elliot almost got the overlap, but can't quite make it happen.
I think they've lost about 2 seconds to Nicky Taylor on this particular lap. Well, definitely a second, nearly 2. As here goes Dalton-Ayres yet again. Brad Smith almost white lining it straight into the middle of the circuit. That's a very defensive line, isn't it, Andy? Pretty much impossible to get round. And you're right, here comes Chris Blakey, Craig Curtis, Tom Churchhouse, and Joel Lask, who's just about somewhere in the background. You might be able to smell their exhaust fumes, but that's about it. He's not really in this battle at all. But Dalton-Ayres, he needs to get through. I thought he would get through the pack a little bit quicker. I thought this last 2 or 3 minutes would be between him and Nicky Taylor. They go through Sonny in, and his contact. Here comes Chris Blakey again, trying to get past Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but he can't quite find a way through. Brad Smith holds on.
Oh, wow, that was close to disaster. Good job, really, that Brad Smith didn't go off the road there, because I think that Elliot might have got himself in some trouble. He still, frustratedly, can't find a way through. Brad has figured out where he needs to defend, and if Dalton-Ayres is going to make this move stick, he's going to have to try something a little bit special into the hairpin. You can see there the various different lines being taken by this group of cars heading through the final corner as we begin what will be the penultimate lap of racing. Race number 1 of the evening then. Andy Carroll, remember, leads by 3.8 seconds. Nicky Taylor is second. This is the fight, though, and it's the fight for third place. Brad Smith, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Chris Blakey, Craig Curtis, and Tom Churchhouse all running line astern, and you do get the feeling that anything could happen at any moment. Has he got the overlap this time? Maybe. Yes, there is a small overlap, I think, and is that going to yield an opportunity down the back straight? The answer could still be yes, but it looks to me as though Brad Smith managed to get back in front.
Tell you what, we're going to have to be thinking about driver of the day, obviously, in a couple of well, probably about half an hour, 40 minutes time, and Craig Kurthouse is probably going to be right up there with one of the drivers of the day. Brad Smith, though, has to be, as well as Elliot Dalton-Ayres. I think we already know where your vote is going, Andy.
No comment. Yes, Tom Churchhouse running in 7th place is what I tried to say. Here comes Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though. He's got the overlap, I think, heading into Croft. This is a very brave place to make a move. Fantastic. Side-by-side racing, he commits to the inside line. There's a little bit of a hip and shoulder on the apex, but Elliot Dalton-Ayres is through. That is such a supremely difficult place to try and overtake, but he just got such a run through the Jim Clark S's, Jack, that I think Elliot felt sort of obliged to commit to the manoeuvre. He did commit, and his reward is third place.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that Brad Smith might have something to say about it after the race, but he'll have to do that in the steward's office another time because he needs to focus on not losing fourth place now. It's Craig Curtis and Chris Blakey's been dropped behind Church House, and Craig Curtis actually retires into the pit lane. I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I wonder if he just fed up of Croft. I don't know. I can't blame him. But it looks like that Dalton Ayres has managed to sew up this third, hasn't he? I don't think Nicky Taylor's going to be caught, and Andy Carroll certainly isn't, because the gap between first and second, it was 3 seconds. It's up to 3.8. Carroll has been untouchable since he's got a free and away.
Nathan Smith was in the pit lane serving a drive-through penalty. I wonder whether it's a similar thing for Chris Blakey, because he's back out on track now, albeit down in 16th place. That's a real shame, because he'd been driving very, very well in this race up to that point, but sadly not going to get much reward. He could, though, be one of the favourites for race 2, couldn't he? Because he's going to be lining up somewhere near the front of the field with that full reverse grid. All 22 starters are still running on the lead lap, I believe, so we would get a full 22-car reverse grid. We are, though, heading towards Barcroft and Sunny for the final time of asking, and it is Elliot Dalton Ayres running in third place. A fantastic fight back drive this has been, but let's not forget about this man, Andy Carroll, who looks as though he's going to convert his first ever VRRC pole position into a race win. Not his first race win, but certainly he's not had a huge amount of success, at least as far as the top step of the podium is concerned, but this one he's made look relatively easy outside of the first 5 minutes anyway. Andy Carroll weaves in celebration and wins the opening race of the night here at Croft. Nicky Taylor can only follow him home, nearly 4 seconds adrift in the end after what turned into quite a lonely race for Nicky, and Elliot Dalton Ayres had anything but a lonely race, a race that arguably he should have won, but ends up with third place after that bizarre moment down at Sunny. Brad Smith fourth, Craig Curtis fifth, Tom Churchhouse sixth ahead of Joel Last, valuable championship points for seventh, Thomas Potter in eighth, Paul Laramie ninth, and there Johnny Ogden completes the top 10 after a very entertaining opening race of the evening. But it's Andy Carroll victorious, and we'll be chatting to him along with his fellow podium finishers in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Croft, everybody. Then race 1 done in the VRRC mini championship here, and a very, very interesting first race it proved to be. In the end, a runaway winner and a pretty comfortable second place finisher as well. It was the battling going on at the bottom end of the podium positions, though, that certainly kept us entertained to the finish. And it's there that we will start, actually, with an interview from our third place driver, Elliot Dalton Ayres. Elliot could so easily have been a race win. That easily, perhaps not the right word to use, but certainly a win was on the cards, I think, until a very bizarre moment up at Sunny. Talk us through what happened there from your perspective.
Basically just went a bit too much on the curb and it just flipped over. I mean, I knew about it because I did it in practice and a couple other people did, but yeah, I mean, I was really pushing hard to get past Andy on that first 1 or 2 laps, and then obviously that happened, and then that dropped us like 6, and then just fought our way back.
Yeah, such a shame, wasn't it? Because it did look like you had the pace to really challenge Andy Carroll. Do you think that a race win would have been on the cards? He wasn't going to be easy to get past, was he?
No, I reckon he would have defended quite a lot because we don't have to gain on anyone. But I definitely think I could have won with a bit of difficulty. But you know, congrats to Andy, and yeah, we'll see what we can do in the second race.
Well, you did at least prove there that it is possible to overtake around Croft, albeit not easy. So what's the strategy now for race 2? There's quite a lot more overtaking to be done.
I think it's just the same strategy as always. Just absolutely go for it. Go for every gap you see, and yeah, let's see what race 2 brings.
It's my kind of strategy. Looking forward to it, Elliot. Congratulations, a fighting third place finish there. Best of luck for race 2.
Cheers, Andy.
So Elliot Dalton-Ayres does get himself onto the podium right in the nick of time, but all of that battling, Jack, was going on some way behind our top 2.
Yeah, Nicky Taylor, after a fairly frantic start to the race, you ended up being one of the most chilled out there, didn't you? What was it like driving around Croft for 20 minutes on your own?
Yeah, it is one of my favourite tracks, and it is probably my favourite track in the UK. So it's nice and good fun. But yeah, the start of that was a bit stressful because obviously I saw Elliot roll, and that was a bit eventful. But I picked up the place there, and then I meant to only send Craig into Sunny Inn, and somehow managed to send both Craig and Chris. So I picked up 2 there, and then yeah, just tried to work with Brad for the start of the race, and then I saw I was quite a bit quicker, so I got past his name, Brad Brain, that one. Yeah, I got past him and then just kept pushing on. And my tyres near the end, I think my front left was on like half wear, my front right was on yellow, so they were getting to the point of being pretty much useless.
I was going to say, because Andy obviously extended that gap by about a second in the final 5 minutes or so. Was that because the tyres had gone, or because you knew you didn't really have to push anymore, or what was it really?
I mean, once I broke from Chris's pack and Brad's pack, I tried to save tyres a little bit, because I always knew with 40 kg it's going to be so hard. It has been so hard for the last 2 races with weight and with the tyres, so I tried to save them a bit. But yeah, it just got to the point at the end where my tyres, I think, were just graining a lot more than what Andy's were, and just had to do the best the times I could with the tyres I had, because in the previous stages of the race I was doing like 30.9s quite consistently and quite happily, and in the minute the tyres went off I went down to about 31.3 consistent, but they were still consistent, just a bit slower.
You picked up some really nice points there, considering Joel Lask ended up in 7th place. He's got a very similar amount of weight on board and everything like that. So you must be thrilled to come away with 2nd place there. And is that sort of like you've banked those points already? That takes the pressure off the reverse grid?
Yeah, I mean, and in all fairness, I would prefer, with how tight Croft's first corner is, I prefer to get higher up in race 1 so I can be a bit relaxed more into T1 for the reverse grid being further back, because Joel, I think, has got in the middle of the pack, so he's in a bit of a dogfight. But yeah, it is what it is. It's just picking up points where we can and what we can do. But yeah, the weight for some known reason is worth so much here. Like I was trying in quali, it was trying my hardest. I like in previous rounds it hasn't been that much, but yeah, that 6 was I think the best I'm gonna get out of this car with the weight.
Well, it was very entertaining from our point of view for the first 5 minutes, Nicky, watching you. After that, you pretty much didn't feature, but it's still an impressive drive in 2nd place, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Nicky. Well done on the 2nd place, and a really important one. I think that could prove to be, as far as the championship is concerned. Nicky Taylor then 2nd, but could do nothing in the end to chase down our dominant race winner, Andy Carroll. Andy, we spoke to you after qualifying, and we were trying to sort of drum up the tension a bit. You know, it's not going to be easy to stay in front. It's not going to be an easy race. And for about 5 minutes, it looked like we were spot on, but that moment for Elliot sort of let you off the hook, didn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, you kind of never want to see that happen to one of your competitors, but it did kind of allow me to relax just the smallest amount, because I think, yeah, as you were just saying to him, I think it would have been hard to keep him behind me for 25 minutes. He's quick everywhere, so yeah, it was a bit of relief. And then I just couldn't shake Nicky for a lot of that race. I was watching it, the gap just stayed at 3 seconds lap after lap after lap, and I was just praying and hoping, trying not to make a mistake. And then as he heard there, just that last 10 minutes his tyres kind of started to go a bit more than mine because of the weight. And yeah, at that point it was just a matter of trying to get around cleanly and not do anything silly, get to the finish.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that in itself should give you a lot of pride, really, that you were running the same lap times as him. Yes, he's got the weight on board, but, you know, he races these things in real life, so you do really well just be able to match those times. And in clean air out in front, you can really sort of focus in then, can't you, on running those laps and perfecting every lap. Are you a driver who finds it difficult to concentrate in those situations, though? I know that in my limited sim racing experience, if I'm out in the lead like that, I start writing the winner's speech a little bit too early. It's easy to let the mind wander, isn't it?
Yeah, I it's something I've gotten better at through experience. I think, you know, I used, you know, a few of the reverse grid races in the earlier days, I used to be out in front and I'd end up driving in my mirrors the whole time. And that would obviously then slow you down and you'd make mistakes. And it's, yeah, I've just kind of learned to relax a bit more and, you know, just hit my brake markers, hit my turning points, and yeah, so that was kind of felt like doing 17 qualifying laps at times. It was just, yeah, just trying to hit those same lines and markers as you do in qualifying, and yeah, that seemed to work.
Well, I'm glad you managed to relax a bit in race 1, because that's probably the last time you'll be able to relax tonight now, coming from the back of the grid in race 2. What's a result that you would sort of realistically be happy with now out of this second race?
Well, I think it's, you know, try and follow Elliot as much as possible by the sounds of it. If he sounds like he's going to be quite aggressive and bold on the overtake, so just got to kind of stick to his bumper hopefully and follow him around. But I think it would be good to get back in the, I think you're always happy with 2 top 10s, so if I could get back up into the top 10, that would be good. But you know, with the first section here, you never have any clue about what you're going to come across when you break into turn 1.
No, absolutely, that can be treacherous. Well, a good idea, I think, to follow Elliot. Maybe don't copy his line through Sunny In, just in case. But yeah, everywhere else, that's probably not a bad strategy to have. Right then, Andy, we'll let you go. Race 2 coming up in a moment or two, but huge congratulations on that race win.
Thank you.
So there we go. That's our first race done, Jack. And now we look towards race 2. And I have to say, and I know I'm going to regret saying this, it was a very clean run through the first few corners the first time round. The reason I'm saying this is because I don't really think we're in for the same sort of thing this time round.
No, oh, thank God you said that at the end there. That bit at the end there. It's going to be a little bit hectic. It's going to be quite difficult, I think. It's a hard first sort of sector, shall we say, in my opinion. Obviously going through all the way up into Tower Bend, basically it's very narrow, and you're gonna have to do well not to get in the gravel trap. You're gonna have to do well not to end up in one of the tire walls. Everybody's gonna have to be rather sensible, and I think that's what I was saying to Nicky Taylor at the end of our interview there. It was actually the fact that now he's got those points in the bank, and taking the pressure off this second race means you don't have to fully go for it, unlike Elliot Dalton Ayres, who really doesn't care. And he might try and lunge 3 people, but the problem is if you go more than 2 wide, you are going to have a problem here. So fingers crossed people are sensible and they don't try and win the lottery on their first go.
Did you just use the words Nicky Taylor and not really going to go for it in the same sentence?
I did. I'm feeling foolish now. Almost like you jinxing the fact we had good driving standards.
Touche. Right then, we are less than a minute away from our reversed grid race, and we are going to have, I'm sure, an interesting run through the first few corners. It is Matt Smith on the front row of the grid, on pole position, in fact. And he'll be hoping that he can get through those first few corners cleanly, because he's going to have a lot of cars barreling in line behind him. We've got Simon Thorpe lining up second, Stu Vickers is third, and fourth place on the grid will be Mark Stokes. Then it's Dave Heasman. Now, Dave Heasman's had some good pace so far tonight, as has Chris Blakey. So those two starting near the front of the grid, if they can avoid cutting the track too much, could maybe be a tip for a race victory. On that subject, Jack, you've got 20 seconds before the race starts. Who's the winner?
Well, I'm going to say, all of a sudden, you just pointed him out, Chris Blakey, because I think, I don't know why he got the drive through. Maybe it was track cutting, maybe it was to get the high up position. We'll have to wait and see, but he's my bet.
Tactical drive-through. Very interesting. Right then, here we go. Red light's about to be illuminated, and our second race of the night here at Croft about to burst into life. Matt Smith versus Simon Thorpe on the front row of the grid. Who gets the whole shot? Well, it's not going to be whoever that was from row 2. I think that was Stokes, wasn't it? Stu Vickers, sorry, from the outside of row number 2, who went absolutely nowhere. It is neck and neck at the front of the field, though. Matt Smith holds on to the advantage, turning into turn 1. Lee Pearcey, though, gets into the back of Simon Thorpe, and here comes the carnage. Cars around everywhere. Thorpe into the barriers, absolute bedlam, and there's more drama. That's Curtis upside down. Craig Curtis is on his roof. I think that Elliot Dalton-Ayres was involved in that as well. Curtis out of the race. We sort of saw that coming, didn't we, Jack?
Well, if some of us didn't jinx it, it would be fine. But yes, we did see that one coming. Matt Smith leads the way. Chris Blakey's up to second place, so maybe I didn't jinx that bit so much. Josh Martin up to third, picking up points. Nathan Smith, Mark Stokes, Stuart Henderson. Unfortunately, that means we've lost Stuart Vickers, who ended up on his roof, or Craig Curtis. I'm not really sure in the end actually who it was. We'll have to wait and see when they all come round for a lap, see how they've sorted themselves out. Josh Martin on Nathan Smith, though, going through the final couple of complex, and there's contact with Mark Stokes and Josh Martin. Josh Martin managed to keep it going in a straight line. That blue car really needs to let the green one back through, though, if he's going to survive a penalty. They're pretty much discussing it, shall we say. Still out there on track. Stu Henderson wants to get involved. There goes through Josh Martin. So no harm, no foul. No. Out on the right-hand side goes someone else, and I'm not sure who it is at this point.
Yes, Johnny Oulton, Brad Smith was involved in that, I think. I think Oulton's still trying to find his way back onto the circuit, but anyway, let's focus on the battle for the race lead. Chris Blakey around the outside of Matt Smith, who almost led the first lap, but by 74 thousandths of a second, it was Blakey ahead. Is Smith going to try and contest this into Clervaux? You bet he is. Sails back through on the inside line, but goes a bit too far into the corner. Blakey gets the switchback, and Chris Blakey, Jack Oliphant's tip for the win. I repeat, Jack Oliphant's tip for the win, just in case this goes wrong, is out in front of the pack. Matt Smith and Nathan Smith, the teammates, remember, running second and third. I forget now what relation they are to each other. Are they brothers?
Richard said they were brothers last week.
No, that's Carroll. Andy Carroll off the road at the chicane, Jack.
Yeah, that was massive, wasn't it? And I don't know whether there was contact involved with that, but Andy Carroll comes back on with a very unsafe rejoin. I think that's safe to say. I think the driver he hit actually carried on absolutely fine. Nathan Smith, Matt Smith switching positions. But yeah, Andy Carroll, who was obviously so strong, race winner, pole position, man. It's not going to be the same story, unfortunately, this time round. He's 22nd place and a good 10 seconds off the driver in front of him. So that he's gonna get through a little bit, but he's not going to be anywhere near our vision for the top 5, I don't think. As they're still going side by side, is that Elliot Dalton-Ayres making a bit of a job of it in terms of Joel Lask, and indeed it is. Actually, it's really hard to try and figure all this out, isn't it? Because Stuart Henderson looks like Brad Smith. I'm getting all confused. Is that Craig Curtis? No, it's Kenny Press, who looks like Craig Curtis, up where Craig Curtis has usually been. And he's still getting a bit more confused. What's happening, Andy, in the background?
Someone else is on their roof now in a yellow car. That was Lee Pearcey, I think, who's got it wrong through the complex. Joel Lask is levering aside Stuart Henderson. There is Lee Pearcey rejoining, or attempting to rejoin the track. This is why, Jack, we don't make foolish comments about driving standards before the race gets underway. You will learn, I'm sure, with a few more years of experience, not to say such silly things. But yeah, this has been rather a messier second race of the evening so far. We're not even 4 minutes into the race, but Chris Blakey's loving it. He's out in front by 8/10. Nathan Smith doing his best to go with him. Matt Smith still sat there in third. Josh Martin could be one of the big winners out of all of this because he's in fourth, he's got no pressure from behind, and most of the drivers we expected to challenge for top honours in this race have really struggled to stay out of trouble.
If only one of us hadn't been commentating for over 10 years, Andy, making these kind of remarks. We bring back Richard John Neal, I think. We oh, I know. Low blow. But it's, I genuinely can't remember what you were saying about that afterwards. I was so blown away. But yeah, Chris Blakey doing very well. He's driven off in the distance. Nathan Smith, Matt Smith, and Josh Martin is the next battle that I think we're probably going to be focusing on, because everybody else still seems pretty content of hitting each other around that mid-pack, so we'll ignore that for the time being. Kenny Press is the latest driver to have gone off the circuit by the looks of it, because he's dropping down the order like a stone in 18th position. Joel Lask up to where he finished in the first race, so really not bad from himself. Where's Nicky Taylor? That's the question that I'm trying to answer. He's in 10th place, so Joel Lask clawing some points back. from Nicky there. Again, the pressure off. He hasn't been involved in any major incidents. Nicky by the looks of it, but he does have damage on his car. But I'd be amazed if there was anybody without damage on the car this morning.
Yeah, quite. Right then, 5 minutes gone, everyone. Deep breath. We've still got 20 minutes of this to go. And, well, actually, the other big winner out of this, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, isn't it? Because he's on the tail of Mark Stokes now. And that means he's in 6th position, knocking on the door, actually, of the top 5. So really impressive run this from Dalton-Ayres, picking his way through the drama. He was the drama, really, in race 1 in a way. But now here he is, cleanly moving up the inside of Mark Stokes, who doesn't really make the corner and runs very, very wide at power, opening the door nicely for Dalton-Ayres, who will now chase off after Josh Martin. The question here, though, really, Jack, is whether Elliot Dalton-Ayres can realistically win this race. I've no doubt that he can get to 2nd, because I do think he's quite a bit quicker than the group of cars ahead, but we know Chris Blakey is on form tonight, and Chris Blakey is also 3 or so seconds up the road from everyone else.
The biggest question in my head is why on earth do people try and play it safe and bank points in these reverse grids? So if you just send it like Elliot Dalton-Ayres, you just seem impervious to anything. I can't believe the progress that he's making. Ever since he's rejoined this championship, we always knew he was going to be quick. But old Josh Martin encouraging someone to go in the wrong direction and allows Elliot Dalton-Ayres to go through. So that's a big shame for Matt Smith, as Josh Martin maybe will have a word directed towards him, probably from Matt Smith and maybe Rich Hayden as well. But Elliot Dalton-Ayres has absolutely flown through, ignored all the crashes and the melees around him. He's into 3rd place. And to answer your question, Andy, I do think there's a race win on for Elliot Dalton-Ayres here tonight.
Well, his job's just been made a little bit easier, hasn't it, really? Because that was a bit of a free pass through into 3rd place. So Elliot Dalton-Ayres onto the podium. He's now 2.7 seconds, but in fact 2.6 seconds now behind Matt Smith, who is 4.2 behind Blakey. The key here is how quickly he can break past, Nathan Smith, not Matt Smith, Nathan Smith in 2nd place and chase off after the race leader. There is Joel Last. Now, he will be pretty happy with this as well. Nicky Taylor up to 9th now, but still several places behind Joel, who looks as though he might be able to go forward a little bit further. He looks a bit quicker than Josh Martin right now. Behind him, Mark Stokes and Stuart Henderson are doing battle, and then it is Nicky Taylor, I believe, at the head of the next group of cars. Is it? He might have a lap car in there. Oh, contact with the Jim Clark S is sideways there. Went Stokes, that was, wasn't it? So Henderson's got past him. Mark Stokes very sideways, floored the throttle, saved it. Now there's more drama in the background for Paul Laramie.
Yeah, Matt Smith and Sam Milner, Thomas Potter's involved. It looks like there's going to be quite a big pilot to have to deal with around just before the sunny in, I believe it is, or maybe halfway around that sort of complex of corners. Anyway, as Joel Lask is up to 5th, Mark Stokes on Stuart Henderson, like Andy was just saying before, has happened, and rather efficiently as well. Josh Martin is under attack again. His track position was good, Andy, but his pace is still not there, is it? He's really struggling tonight. The fact that he's in 4th place at the moment, so let's say he stays inside the top 5 after the next lap, is going to be a decent effort, and he'll have 17 long minutes to stay there. The more he defends, I would say, the longer, the worse actually it's going to be. I would let Joel Lask go through and then follow him, because the biggest threat is not Joel Lask, it's actually Mark Stokes, Brad Smith, Stuart Henderson, Nicky Taylor, Dave Heasman behind.
I could not agree with you more, Jack. I think you've got to pick your battles sometimes, haven't you? And this is not really one that Josh Martin's going to win. And I think he might have been listening to us, because he's pulled over. No, maybe not. He's definitely still contesting that on the inside line. But Joel Lask is going to drive right around the outside of him, and he's going to move through into 4th position. Yep, gets the move made, and he will now set off after Elliot Dalton-Ayres in front. Dalton-Ayres, meanwhile, is carving into the advantage that was held by Nathan Smith. 1.2 seconds all now that separates those two. But Joel Lask, having got past Josh Martin, I think that was a blessing in disguise for Josh, because he's 3.3 seconds clear of the chasing pack. And Ben Smith has just got past Mark Stokes, so we know that Ben Smith is pretty rapid, and he is now going to be chasing down Josh Martin. Josh didn't need to waste any time there battling with Joel Lask.
No, absolutely not, and especially when you got the restrictor in the car, you need to get all the advantage you can to get gone. Hopefully Josh Martin will do that. Brad Smith versus Nicky Taylor is probably the next battle we're going to be having a look at, because Mark Stokes is behind him. Nicky Taylor all the way on the white line, up the inside through the final corner. Brad Smith should have the better exit, but no, Nicky Taylor with a really nice early exit there. Probably using all that life on that front right tyre, to be honest, but using it well, because he has got himself into 6th place.
Yes, he has. So Nicky Taylor then up into 6th. That means he's only 2 places now behind Joel Lask. So he's on a net gain here then, really, because he was more places than that ahead of Joel in race 1. He's now narrowing the gap to his nearest championship rival in this one. And of course, Josh Martin really desperately now needs to try and keep Nicky Taylor behind him should Nicky come knocking, but that's not going to be easy to do in the slightest. Right then, Elliot Dalton-Ayres has caught Nathan Smith. He's just over 6 seconds adrift of the race leader, though, and he's not yet found a way past Nathan Smith. So if Chris Blakey doesn't put a foot wrong here, I don't think it's going to be that easy for Dalton-Ayres to chase him down. Elliot therefore might choose to just take his time over this move a little bit more, wait for his moment. We saw in race 1 that he's got a few tricks up his sleeve, and he's going to have to deploy a couple of them now to find a way past Nathan Smith, who on occasion this season, Jack, has been as quick as anyone.
Yeah, it is a difficult driver to get past, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres will know that full well because he's been in enough rounds with him now to realise he's no mug, put it that way. And I think that Nathan Smith has left the door open there. No, he's gone very, very wide, though. Can he get that reverse? No, he's made that very easy for Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Just as we were saying how good Nathan Smith was driving, I think he may well have slightly given up that position, but no, he's getting on the fight back. He's got that side slipstream. I'm not sure if that's a thing in the simulator, but it definitely looks like it is because he's going to have the inside going into turn 1. And we said about how quick that is. Dalton-Ayres goes for that cut back. He's going to have the inside going into the chicane. Look at this. It's going to be a bit dicey here, Andy, isn't it? But Nathan Smith is going to go stage exit left. No, he's going to try and make the corner, but that means he has to dive in behind Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Yeah, absolutely. That was never really going to work around the outside there, was it, through the chicane? But he might choose to have another go into tower. Remember, he is 15 kilos lighter, his car is anyway, than Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and that's just giving him slightly better acceleration out of some of these corners. He might use that to his advantage now, coming out of tower to try and get the overlap into the Jim Clark Essays. He's hunting around on the outside. Look at that, drags himself up alongside, but it's the long way round the left. He can't get the inside for the right, and almost got into the back, actually, of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. So very, very close indeed. Elliot should now be okay, I think, but look at the damage that's done to his chances of winning the race, because they're now 7.2 seconds adrift of Chris Blakey with only 13 minutes to go. So I think that just took a lap too long, really, didn't it, to get through. But as soon as you start going side by side around here, Jack, we've said it all night long, you will lose a chunk of lap time. That's exactly what happened there to Elliot Dalton-Ayres. I think second as good as it will get now.
Yeah, you read my mind, really. I think I was looking at the time to Chris Blakey as they were going side by side while you were covering that, Andy, and it just kept eking out 2 tenths, 3 tenths, and then jumped by half a second as they went through tower. It was always going to be a bit difficult. Joel Lask has gotten through on Josh Martin. Nicky Taylor is the next driver to have his radar set on the back of Martin's car. Obviously, Lask got ahead of him a couple of laps ago, but look at the gap that he's pulled out. Even with 45 kilos of ballast on board, he's the heaviest car out there is Joel Lask, and he's still putting in some decent lap times. But Chris Blakey is not slow at all. He's just actually put in a purple sector 2. His last lap was a 1:30.9. The lap before that was his fastest of the race, a 1:30.7. To put that in perspective, Elliot Dalton-Ayres' best lap overall, which was when he was catching Nathan Smith, he only had one flying lap before he did catch Nathan, to be fair, I think, was a 1:30.8, so a tenth slower, or half a tenth slower, than Chris Blakey's fastest time. What he can do now in fresh air is anyone's guess, but in just saying that Chris Blakey is driving very, very well.
Yeah, no, he really is, isn't he? And again, a bit like Andy Carroll in race 1 now, really doesn't need to overdrive here. He can drive at 90%, and there's very little chance that Dalton-Ayres is going to be able to catch him, really. So looking good for Chris Blakey. Right then, what can Nicky Taylor do about Josh Martin? This is the fight for 5th position. Josh Martin, remember, 3rd in the championship coming into tonight. Nicky Taylor 2nd in the championship, but there were 20-odd points between them, and Nicky's already further extended that, significantly extended that, after Josh Martin's difficult race 1. What can Josh do now to keep the real world mini challenge racer behind? Well, he defends into the hairpin, he misses the first part of the apex, just about gets back to the late apex, but he just doesn't have the speed, and whether it's in a straight line or whether it's around the corners, I don't know, but Josh Martin just does not seem happy in that car. It seems a bit lazy, doesn't it? Like, it's not really changing direction. The front isn't hooking up in quite the same way that Nicky's and Elliot Dalton-Ayres' cars are, and a front limited car around Croft is not a good thing, is it, Jack?
No, I mean, it was illustrated quite well there, actually, by the final corner, and we might see it through tower as well, actually, about how Josh Martin's He went wide and then to get that cutback for that late apex. But then as he got to the late apex, he put his foot down and it still managed to push him a little bit wide. He got away with it, but as they go through tower, we're not going to see an illustration of it because they are side by side. But Nicky Taylor trying to go around the outside. Is it going to just give us a bit of a helping hand with how much grip he's got? Look at that, around the outside of tower bend. And he's got to really run through the S's as well. There we go. Josh Martin, what can he do?
I speak from personal experience here when I say there is nothing more frustrating than being overtaken around the outside, especially when you're someone of Josh Martin's caliber. That I can't speak from experience of, I'm afraid, but being overtaken around the outside is never a nice feeling. He just doesn't have the pace tonight and really wasn't able to put up any sort of fight there against Nicky Taylor. So Nicky now into 5th place. Josh is not the only one disappointed with the outcome of that battle, though. I suspect that Joel Lask isn't terribly pleased to see the red and yellow Mini now appearing in his mirrors, because I suspect that this gap is about to start closing. Nicky Taylor should really have the pace here to chase after Joel Lask, and we'll monitor that gap with interest. Right, let's try and sort this out now. Then we've got cars clattering together like castanets. That's Thomas Potter off onto the grass. I didn't actually catch who nerfed him. Might have been Matt Smith, might have been Johnny Oulton. He's now back on the inside of Paul Laramie. There is further contact. Jack, discuss.
Can I discuss that without getting in trouble? Yeah, no,
Let's move on.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. The best thing out of that is the fact that they're not next to each other anymore, probably, because ultimately it did look a little bit chaotic. I'm not going to say Thomas Potter did it as a vengeful spike back, because we don't know who actually hit them in the first place. We don't know who came on and hit.
Well, it wasn't Laramie, I can tell you that much.
No, exactly. And I think ultimately everyone was going for the same bit of track. Everyone was trying to lunge each other, try and get some kind of advantage. It's a bit of a melee. A bit of racecraft was missing there, a bit of race experience potentially. I'm sure there'll be words said about quite a lot of this race. I imagine the race debrief is going to be quite substantial. Good luck, Rich. That's on a Monday night, and hopefully all the drivers turn up and take note and listen as well, because although they might disagree, another point of view isn't always a bad thing to actually bring on board. So yeah, fingers crossed that they might learn a thing or two about a little bit of racecraft, a lot of experience, and they take that forward, because ultimately, like what Andy Carroll was saying to you, Andy, actually earlier, was the fact that, you know, you'd be running towards that top end and you'd be almost a bit worried and a bit scared as Churchhouse gets past Mark Stokes. No, not quite. But the racecraft wasn't really there. You know, you get nervous, you start driving in mirrors, you go for moves that aren't on just because you think you have to, because you're at the front end of the field. That's not how he's supposed to drive it. As a anchor up the inside for Heisman on Churchhouse. Yeah, a little bit of experience is what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
They keep
okay.
interrupting me.
Yes, they do, don't they? They won't give us a moment to breathe here. We've still got 7.5 minutes of this to go, and they're still side by side into Clervaux. Heisman's going to try and do the impossible and go around the outside at Clervaux. That wasn't going to work, and so Tom Churchhouse rightfully, really, retains the position after that little bit of a helping hand that he had through the hairpin. Yeah, that race debrief it starts on a Monday evening. It might finish at Wednesday afternoon, I think, the way we're going. There is so much to discuss after what has been a very busy second race of the night, and it ain't over yet, because Nicky Taylor is starting to eat into this advantage that was held by Joel Lask. 1.2 seconds is the distance between the two of them. Josh Martin wasn't really, you feel, able to put up a fight against Nicky Taylor, but we know that Joel Lask is definitely going to put up a fight against Nicky Taylor, whether he feels able to or not. This could be a grandstand finish between these two championship contenders, who, let's face it, have had run-ins in the past, Jack.
Yeah, well, Joel Lask has had run-ins with a few drivers, and so has Nicky Taylor, so they were bound to clash horns eventually again, weren't they? But to be honest, we're all here for it as neutrals. We want to see the best racing with the best racers out on track, not settled in the steward's room or anything like that, not settled on drop scores or anything, just out there on track at a track like Croft, where they're both going to have worn tyres, they're both going to have similar situations, they've got battered looking cars. This could be a grandstand finish for the next 6 minutes, because Nicky, I think, well, clearly over the course of the evening, has the pace on Joel Lask, but Lask has that track position, and he's not going to want to give it up either. So extra motivation for both drivers to try and take points away from either of them. Here's back to Churchhouse, Mark Stokes and Dave Heisman. I'm not entirely sure I can handle this one again, Andy.
Well, they refuse to leave each other alone, these three, don't they? Mark Stokes having a solid drive, actually, here in ninth position. He's been sideways more than once, I seem to recall, in this race. Hopefully not about to have that happen again. He has got Tom Churchhouse attacking him, though, heading down into Tower Corner, and he's left the gap on the inside very invitingly. It would have been rude of Tom Churchhouse not to try and slip through on the inside, really, which he does indeed commit to, and they run wheel to wheel on corner exit as well. Who's going to come out on top? There's a bit of a squeeze from Churchhouse. He's got the outside for the left, but then the inside for the next 3 or 4 corners, and that should, in the end, be enough for him to lever aside Mark Stokes, which it is, and he moves into 9th place. Can Dave Heasman now follow him by? Stokes gets a penalty look for cutting, so he went a bit too wide there through one of those corners, and unfortunately Mark Stokes were about to remove from this battle because he's got to drive through to serve with just now 5 minutes to go.
It's a bit of a shame, really, because he did not only open the door for Tom Churchhouse, he invited him in and offered him some lemonade as well. I mean, it was just so inviting for Churchhouse just to go straight through. And although, yeah, okay, Stokes put a little bit of a fight up after that, it wasn't really the fight that we were hoping for, was it? And as I said, it ends early anyway because Stokes now has to go and serve that drive-through. There is a couple of places around Croft that you can be pinged for track limits. I think we just saw one of them, actually, didn't we? And that's a second corner, which everybody flatlines. I think probably you're going to end up with a track cut there. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a track cut on that chicane as well. These drivers are performing all of this perfectly. It looked like they were a little bit up the inside. There is Mark Stokes taking his drive-through. And the outside of the Jim Clark S's on the exit of it, I think, is where Mark Stokes just got pinged for it. So there are a fair few places that you can run a little bit too wide, a little bit too narrow. That's why we've seen so many drive-throughs so far this evening.
Indeed so, and might not be the last one either, because there still are 4 minutes to go. Drivers pushing hard now at the end of the race on tyres that are past their best, so perhaps more likely we're going to see people drifting out wide, something that Joel Lask can't afford to do because he's got Nicky Taylor breathing down his neck now. This gap was about 1.5, 1.6 seconds at one point. It is now 1.6 car lengths as they drop down towards the complex once again. This is the 14th lap of the race. We're going to get another few in this one yet, and Nicky Taylor wants to try and get on with this and forces a rare mistake actually out of Joel Lask, who just couldn't get the car stopped into the right-hand elements of the complex. That does, though, put him on the defensive line into the hairpin. Can Nicky Taylor get the switchback? The frustration here, Jack, though, is that you get the switchback out of the hairpin if you can get it. It's not easy to do, and it really only puts you on the outside into Clairvaux, which, as we know, can be the danger zone.
Yeah, and if you've got a heavy car anyway, you're pretty much going to be slow out of that corner regardless. But they've both got heavy cars. Round the outside, Nicky Taylor around Clairvaux. You said it was impossible, Andy, and I thought he was going to try and prove you wrong. Thank God he didn't, because it is next to impossible, and it would have been ended up in a clash of the Titans up the on board, actually, shall we say, going through the chicane and down into Tower Bend. Which way is Joel Lask going to go? Is he going to defend the left-hand side? Is he going to defend the right? He's likely to stick it right in the middle of the circuit as Nicky Taylor on the white line. Those left tyres so squeaky close to the grass. It looks like Joel Lask is going to hold on to it for the time being, but Nicky Taylor has just got that thing on rails, hasn't he? Joel Lask pushes him onto the grass a little bit. Nicky Taylor all over the curves on the right, all over the curves on the left, not using track limits, and I tell you what, Lask is going to be in for a bit of a headache now. Nicky Taylor up the inside of Sonny in. My goodness, he almost was an Elliott Oulton Airs with that curve.
Well, he knew that Joel Lask was going to turn in, which Joel absolutely did, and I think Joel was leaving a bit to chance there, really. He knew that Nicky wouldn't want to risk any contact, and I think Joel knew that if he just turned into the corner anyway, Nicky would probably disappear, which he did. So clever driving that from Joel Lask, using a mix of his reputation and Nicky's championship aspirations there in his benefit. And as a result, he comes through to start the penultimate lap of the race, still in third place. And as they battle, Brad Smith, is starting to reel them in as well. So 4th, 5th and 6th could be together before the end of the race. But Jack, how pivotal could this battle prove to be come season's end? This championship has got all the hallmarks of being one of those that goes right down to the wire, that could be decided by a handful of points at most. And, well, who knows? If Joel Lask or Nicky Taylor are champion at the end of the season, either of them could look back at this result and say, yeah, that was a key moment in the championship.
Absolutely, and I'm just looking at their drop scores, and even they are pretty close. I think Joel Lask is dropping 36 points, Nicky Taylor's dropping 31. So even if they have a bit of a mare later on in the season, that means there's a massive mistake that they could end up making. What I'm trying to say, Andy, in a very terrible way, is the fact that neither of them can afford to hit each other off, really, because you can't afford to get disqualified, or you can't afford to be put into the wall. They have to be really squeaky clean. Nicky Taylor doesn't look that bothered about that right now. He's not thinking of drop scores. He's not thinking of anything else apart from getting ahead of Joel Lask.
Well, you say that, but there have been a couple of times where he's had a chance to go up the inside, and Joel, like I said, has just sort of turned across his nose, knowing that Nicky can't afford to make a mistake. In a way, there's more pressure on Nicky here. He's the one who has to make the overtake. He's got to keep it clean. If there's contact, it's far more likely to be blamed on the aggressor, on the overtaking car, than it is the defensive one. Not always, but very often that is the way it works out. So Nicky has to make this a clean move, and he has to be weighing up the risk versus reward factor. He's only got one more lap to try and weigh that up, though, because we're on to the last lap of the race. Chris Blakey only 4.8 seconds clear of Elliot Dalton Ayres. He should still be fine, but that gap has been creeping down. How much of that is Chris Blakey managing things, and how much is Elliot Dalton Ayres charging? I'm not so sure. Nathan Smith sat in third place, a bit lonely really in third, but anything but lonely are our two championship protagonists, who are less than a mini's length apart as they head down the back straight and into really the last really good overtaking opportunity of the race. Joel Lask covers the middle ground. Nicky Taylor wasn't really close enough to attack anyway. Has Lask overshot the corner? No, gets back to the late apex, and for now at least Jack stays in front.
Yeah, smart that by Lask. He was going slightly defensive. He left half a car length on the outside, which allowed himself to take the fastest line while also appearing to be defensive and try and stave off any sort of thoughts of Nicky Taylor lunging. I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor settles down for this fourth place. I also wouldn't be surprised if he tries to lunge him, but that's the case of watching Nicky, isn't it? You never really know what you're getting. Chris Blakey has been absolutely superb. I know we've been focusing a lot elsewhere, just like the Andy Carroll's win earlier on, but Chris Blakey's about to finish this race to come out the final corner. He's been undeniably superb tonight and in this second race as well. He's won it as convincingly as Andy Carroll did just about half an hour ago, and very, very impressed. Elliot Dalton Ayres charged through the order and got his way up to second place. Nathan Smith is about to cross the line in third, with Joel Lask leading Nicky Taylor across the line into fourth and fifth position, respectively, with Brad Smith in sixth.
Indeed, so fantastic race that, and Nicky Taylor, I think in the end did realise that discretion was the better part of valour, wasn't it? There was no point in taking a really risky move there, especially given the fact that it was Joel Lask that he was racing with, and he will settle for fifth and hopefully not lose the championship by a couple of points come season's end. Well, fantastic. Second race of the night. We will have all of the fallout from that one and at least have a chance to chat to our top three finishers in just a few minutes. Well, welcome back, everybody. Then a superb night of racing here at Croft has come to its conclusion. Our second race of the night has been completed, and well, what was a slightly messy first half actually boiled down into a really fascinating set of battles through the second half of the race, none of which really involved our podium finishers. Unfortunately, they had among the quieter races of anybody out there on track. They are the three drivers who we will be speaking to first, and we'll begin with our third place finisher, Nathan Smith, who finds himself on the podium. And Nathan, a fairly quiet conclusion to your race, but the first sort of 10 minutes or so, they were pretty lively, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a bit of a quiet race, really. I definitely didn't have the pace, struggled with the car, felt like a sack of potatoes, but I thought I just dealt with it, managed to get a bit of a break at the start, and then sat behind my brother and Josh, and picked them off and yeah, managed to stay out. But I couldn't match anywhere near the pace of Chris. He was gone absolutely like a rocket.
Few drivers I think we've spotted tonight who just they don't really look like the car's responding quite as they would like. Do you think that that is maybe setup that a few of you have missed, or is it just that this place really requires a certain kind of driving style?
It really, you have to be so smooth around here. Any silly little mistakes, there's a few curbs if you hit, they'll knock you clean off. There's a few bumps, if you hit them, they'll knock you offline. It's such a hard track. It's one of my worst tracks, to be honest. I'm quite glad I got a podium, but I think with Joel and Nicky behind, I sort of backed off halfway through that race because there's no way I was going to catch Elliot. I saw Joel and Nicky battling, so I felt kind of safe, and the car was just getting worse and worse and worse by the lap. So I just took it easy, and yeah, it was all right. It wasn't the most enjoyable race for me, but it was all right.
Yeah, look, you got on the podium. That's not a bad thing, and you escaped most of the drama that was going on in the early stages there, which is definitely a good thing. But we've seen some flashes of real pace from you actually this season so far. It's very difficult though, no matter how quick you are, to get on the podium, isn't it? So always nice when you do get that opportunity. You must know as you're lining up on the grid for the reverse grid race. Oh yeah, okay, I've got a shot here.
Well, it's pure luck, to be honest. It's all how you get around the first couple of corners, isn't it? Because it could all end pretty quick, and most of the time it does. But I seem to have, in this car, I can get quite a good start nearly every time off the lights. I sort of pull, and then you can sort of hang back and pick your way through quite nicely with this car. But trying to push it around here is a nightmare.
Yeah, got to be smooth, got to be patient, haven't you, around here? But you managed to get yourself on the podium with a solid third place finish. So big congratulations, Nathan. We'll see you again next week.
Yes, thank you.
So Nathan Smith then finishes in third position. As he said, pretty quiet race for him, as it was through the second half, really, for our second place finisher, Jack.
Yeah, and well, the first question, Elliot, is how the hell did you do that? That was astonishing. To avoid all of the drama and to get through and to be in second place by the end of it was simply stunning. How on earth did you get through the drama at the first time? Was that skill, anticipation, or pure fluke?
If I'm honest, I didn't get through it. I got caught up in about 3 incidents where someone was side on to me.
Right.
But yeah, somehow the car stayed on the road, wasn't pointing in the wrong direction or upside down this time, which was good. And yeah, just got through to like 6th, and then I literally thought to myself I was in 6th before and I got a podium, so I can do it again. And that's exactly what we did. And then just lap by lap, just kept catching up to Nathan, and then got past him at Clover, I think it was, and then just I was trying to get into the 5 seconds between me and Chris, just in case he had a penalty, so I would get in front of him. But you know, it was a good race, that.
I was gonna say, did you end up sort of when you got into second? Did you have a sniff that there might be an opportunity to move forward one more position? Were you desperate for it, or was it a case of you were quite satisfied with second place? You just wanted to get to the end then, and just the adrenaline had gone, sort of thing.
I mean, you always want to be first, but yeah, I mean, back when I was in the pack and I saw just this black car going round, I was trying to figure out who it was, and I looked on the leaderboard and saw it was Chris, and obviously he was quick tonight, so it was just trying to push really hard. But on the last 5 minutes, I think his tyres just dropped because I was gaining on him half second every lap. But other than that, yeah, pretty chilled second half of the race.
I was going to say the second half was pretty chilled. You're talking a lot about obviously moving through the championship order because you got nothing to lose. Why not, sort of thing. I can tell you're up to 7th place with that one. 2 points behind Andy Carroll, Tom Churchhouse. You're very nearly into the prize-giving positions there. How hard do you think you can go?
Well, I'd like to say first, but I haven't actually seen the gap, so it could be possible, it might not be, but I think I definitely want to finish top 3.
Well, finishing top 3 is definitely on the cards as far as what I can see in front of me right now, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Elliot Dalton, big congratulations on the double podium, and I think it's safe to say, although we have just finalised it literally as we've been talking, But driver of the round is going your way. It was very close. Big shout out to a few other drivers as well. Chris Blakey is one of them, Craig Curtis. But yeah, Elliot Dalton there guarding all that fight through the pack.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, well done, Elliot. Congratulations. A great night all round, really. Not quite maybe the win that he would have felt he was on the cards for him, but anyway, 2 podium finishes not to be sniffed at. Right then, a race win did go the way of the next man that we're going to speak to there, and that is Chris Blakey. Chris, huge congratulations. Fantastic drive there. A lot of your work was done in the early stages, I think it's fair to say, but even once you broke through into the lead, it was so important and I'd imagine so difficult to just keep your composure and not make any mistakes.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it was the first corner was chaos. I saw a gap, got through, and just didn't look back. I just tried to hammer out the laps, started setting some goodish times. I thought, right, okay, keep it here, and then I saw Elliot get the second. I was like, oh, here he comes. So I was just desperately trying to keep the gap, and then the tyres went off. So I was keeping the gap fairly kind of steady, and the tyres went off, and I was making the odd mistake, so I'll back off ever so slightly, just enough to kind of keep the distance. But yeah, that was very nerve-wracking. That was very, very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's always one of the most difficult things to do, I think, as a racer, be it real world or sim, is to be out there on your own, just watching that gap to second place, which you managed really, really well. And I'm sure you were grateful of, because we saw some of the side-by-side battling out there getting a bit physical at times. Grateful, I'm sure you were, to escape all of that in the early stages.
Yeah, to be fair, the first race was good racing. We had some really good racing. I had to peel in the pits because I ran out of fuel, so I had to splash and dash on the last lap of the first. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had probably wouldn't have had such a good race in the second race. But still have a. But yeah, it's great racing with like I said, Craig, Andy, Elliot. They're all great guys. Don't get turned in on it. It's very good racing, and yeah, absolutely love it. I really do like Croft as well. Got a lot of fun memories of Croft. I actually won my first real race at Croft last year here, so yeah, a lot of good memories at Croft.
Ah, interesting. Right. Okay. Well, I'm sort of tempted to extend the broadcast by another half hour or so and get you and Jack to reminisce about all of the good times at Croft. Jack's got many a positive story to share about what I think we've established is his favourite racetrack in the country. But we'll maybe save that to another time, Chris. Congratulations on the win. Sure, not the last time that we're going to see you on the top step of the podium. And yeah, very narrowly missing out on driver of the round. Well, it was nip and tuck, but a really, really solid night all round.
Thank you, guys.
So, Chris Blakey then is the race winner. Jack Oliphant is now officially outvoted in the Is Croft a Good Circuit or Not vote that's been going on tonight. And I think that's the last we need to say on the subject. We're heading next week to another track, actually, that sort of divides opinion a bit. It is the Anglesey Circuit in North Wales. I don't recall ever racing here with the VRRC in the past. If we have, it's been a long, long time. No, I'm hearing from Rich, it is the first time that we'll have raced there. We're racing on the, I think, slightly inferior Grand Prix circuit. The coastal circuit is the best, but anyway, what do I know? This will still certainly provide some good racing. The location, second to none, but it's a very technically demanding circuit, this, Jack. Have you raced there before at all?
I was going to leave earlier. I'm disappointed I didn't. But yeah, no, to be honest, having grown up, as you know, in the Northwest as well, Andy, never once have I had any kind of coming into contact with Anglesey.
Really?
Ever. I haven't commentated there, I haven't raced there, I haven't tested there, I haven't done a track day there, and I've never done anything in the sim there either. It's really going to be a completely fresh experience for me, which means I won't be going into it pre-hating it, which will be a delightful new experience for us all. Bit of a shame you're not going to be there, unfortunately. Obviously, talking us through it, but it looks like a decent track. I have seen sort of videos of it, people driving it and stuff like that. It looks quite good fun. It looks very narrow. It looks very difficult to drive, so it'll really separate the drivers. And again, qualifying is probably going to be the most important 20 minutes of the entire day.
Well, I don't think you need me, really. It sounds like you've got it covered, Jack. What you don't know about Anglesey isn't worth knowing. I think that's what we established there. It has really genuinely been a pleasure being back working with Jack, Rich, everyone here at the VRRC. Last time I think I'll be here for this championship, but don't worry, you're not getting rid of me that easy. And I should be back hopefully for the endurance races in a few weeks' time. But it's been a fantastic night of racing here at Croft. We will, well, some of us be back next week, and indeed for the next 3 weeks as we take the championship to its conclusion. And Nikki Taylor and Joel Lask continue their battle for the title that you will not want to miss.